Today we're going to be talking about something called Notice and Note, and it is a creation by a group of academics who studied reading and literature, and they thought, wow, that a lot of books have a lot of things that are in common, so how do we help students sort through a story or a piece of literature and help them understand better? So Notice and Note was born. So first, this is something that's supposed to help you become a better reader. So first, let's talk about what good readers do. Good readers are alert to the signposts that authors provide. So that, and we're going to go over each and every one, and then you're supposed to stop when you see them, take notice of them, and make a note. Because if you can do these things, then you're better aware of how a writer writes and what the creative process is like, and that makes you more appreciative of like a piece of literature. Okay, so why does the state put up signposts along the road? Right, so all of these. So they put them up so you know where to go. You know how far something is. You know when to stop, when to yield. If the road's going to get curvy, like you know. So writers do the same exact thing, just a little bit more indirectly. So what does each of these signposts mean? So we know this one means deer. So we live in the South, so we've all seen this one. Stop, airport, hospital, parking is available, school. So you know what each of these signs mean because you either do already drive or you've ridden in a car at least once in your life. Because you are aware of these, you are familiar with them. You just need to become more familiar with reading signposts. And they put things in books so that you as the reader can get the information that you need. So the first one that we're going to look at is contrast and contradictions. So this is anytime you have a character who says or does something that he or she hasn't been saying or doing all along, when they're starting to act sort of abnormally, then you know that something is wrong. That is a contrast or a contradiction to their previous behavior. So that is something that you need to pay attention to. Or when a character experiences something in contrast with what he or she expects. So if a character maybe meets someone and they go out and they're like, oh, I'm going to have a crappy time, they're so boring, but then they end up really liking that person, you need to pay attention. So contrast and contradictions, they are used to show us more aspects of the character itself or what is going on in the story. So you're supposed to be thinking about the character, what is their motivation, what situation do they find themselves in, etc. So if you see a character that is doing something that you're like, oh, why are they doing this? Stop and ask yourself, why is this character doing that? The answer can help you make a prediction or an inference about the plot or conflict. Okay? That is a little quick fact sheet. And then here are some examples. So when a villain starts acting kind to a character, you think, why are they doing that? Okay, maybe to get them on their side or to sway them, or maybe they're not really a villain after all. Okay? When a nice character is suddenly mean or cruel to another character, anytime that this happens, you need to ask yourself, why are they doing this? Our second signpost, as it is called an aha moment. An aha moment is a point when we realize something, and that realization changes our actions. Anytime you read, suddenly I realized, it came to me in a flash. Now I knew. This sign point is kind of easy to recognize because I'm sure that you've had some of these aha moments yourself. You walk into class and everyone's looking at their notes and you're like, holy moly, we have a test today and I totally forgot. That is an aha moment because you suddenly realize something. Okay? Or for an example, sometimes you let your room get a little out of control. Maybe not to that level, but you do, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's time to clean. You just realize these certain things. So anytime that any of this happens and you see a situation like that in a book where a character is figuring something out and they're like, oh, and they finally have like the light bulb moment, you stop and you ask yourself, how might this change things? So if the character just figured out a problem, then you've learned about the conflict and the solution in the story. If the character just learned a life lesson, if they just understood some big or grand idea, then voila, there is your theme for the entire story. Here's a quick fact sheet. Okay, so here's another example. So when a character isn't struggling with an issue, but suddenly they have an epiphany and figure out their problem. So some of you may have read or seen the movie A Christmas Carol. So when Scrooge meets the three ghosts and he realizes that he has been cruel and mean, and he decides to change for the better, he has had an aha moment about his behavior and he decides to change. And that is really most of the theme of A Christmas Carol is deciding to be a better person. Our next one is called Tough Questions. So when you're reading a story and the character sort of asks themselves like a really difficult question or a serious question, why are they asking themselves this? It's for a reason. Okay, so these are different from normal questions like, did we have homework? Will you take out the garbage? These are tough questions that we don't really ask every day. So maybe when someone has died, you say, will I ever get over this? Now that is a tough question, and that in a story it leads to maybe that character finding themselves or getting over their loss or something like that. When a character is maybe doing something that is very difficult, or they're being tempted in some way, and they say, am I strong enough to say no? Now that is going to show something about their character. That is going to give more insight to who they are. So tough questions are not just about the answer to a question. I don't think any of those questions say, like, some people ask, why are we here? Like on Earth, why are we here? Okay, well that can't be answered by every single person in a unified way. Like not everyone's going to give you the same answer, and these tough questions are not meant to be answered just lickety split. But they are often more about big ideas and like universal ideas, and they often make you wonder about other things. And if you have a character who is sort of thinking about these tough questions, that is sort of the author trying to lead you to the theme or the major lesson. So if you have a character that is asking themselves or other people like a tough question, stop and ask yourself, what does this question make me wonder about? Now the answer will tell you about the conflict and might give you ideas about what will happen later in the story. You will learn about a character's internal conflict, okay? So this is what is going on inside their brain. That is a quick sheet. And then here's some more questions. Why are we here again? What am I supposed to do with my life? Why doesn't anyone love me? What's the point of life? So all of these questions, if you see anything like this in a story, you need to stop and ask yourself the question for the tough question. Our next one is number 4. It is called Words of the Wiser. It is when a character, normally an older character, takes the main character aside and gives them some advice. So you may have heard, don't put all your eggs in one basket, or don't count your chickens before they hatch, or treat others the way you want to be treated. This is advice that someone else has been through in your life that they've learned and they are now bestowing to you. They do the same thing in books. So if you see an older character, like any older character who's like sort of giving like fatherly or motherly advice, then you need to say, stop and ask yourself, what is the life lesson and how will it affect the character? Whatever the life lesson is that this older character is trying to communicate to this younger one, now then you've probably found the theme for that story. And here's some examples. Yoda from Star Wars. He's an older character who like gives sort of guidance to Luke. Dumbledore from Harry Potter. He is like a grandfatherly character who sort of guides Harry. And Harry really trusts him. And then you even have like Rafiki from The Lion King and Mufasa from The Lion King. So both of these characters who are sort of older, and they bring Simba back into the Pride Lands and show him who he was meant to be. Here's our fifth one. It's called Again and Again. Now, again and again is when an author repeats something in a text, sometimes separated by many pages, but they put it there to make a point. And it can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be an object or a situation. So, we're going to skip those examples. Here we have, so if you see something like coming up again and again and again, then you need to stop yourself and ask, why does this keep showing up again and again and again? Now, this is going to tell you about the theme or the conflict, and it could possibly foreshadow what will happen later in the story. Here are some examples. There's one big example like in the Marvel universe. It's the Infinity Stones. Now, they were mentioned in a lot of the previous movies before Thanos ever came into the picture. They were using the symbol of the stones to lay the groundwork for the reveal of the Infinity Gauntlet. Okay, so each of these movies where they're picking stuff out, they were ultimately leading to the Avengers. Okay, so when something is repeated over and over again, or you see it, or it can maybe be a person that is being repeated, maybe like a teacher, or maybe like a friend, like an old friend, you keep talking, or the character keeps talking about them, maybe they're going to come back later in the story, or something important happened with them. So just pay attention if you see something recurring. And number 6 is memory moment. So anytime that a character interrupts the story to regale us with a memory, then that is very important. So you can say, my dad liked to tell the story. That picture always reminded me. Or they can be talking about something like in the town's past. They do that a lot. In the Hunger Games, you have that whole first bit where Katniss discusses the falling of District 13, so that's setting up the premise for why the Hunger Games exist in the first place. So that is telling you something very important, and then it's going forward to tell you how they're going to fight back. Okay? So in film, like in movies, memory moments are known as flashbacks. So any time that a character thinks back on something that has happened before, it is important. Anytime that happens, please stop and take a closer look at whatever it was, because it is important. So that is all of your signposts for Notice and Note. I hope that you can use that going forward to read the text that we will read this year, and we're going to be doing some practice with it, so I hope that you were paying attention. If you have any questions, please let me know.